She's homeless, struggling to survive, until she finds a lost wallet full of cash. But instead of keeping it, she does the unthinkable. She returns it. Little does she know, its owner is a billionaire, and this act of honesty will change her life forever. What happens when a woman with nothing meets a man with everything? Stay tuned, because this story is about to take a twist you won't see coming. The wallet is old with frayed edges and a faded leather exterior, but to Lily Carter, it's like a treasure chest. She finds it lying on the cracked sidewalk outside the cafe where she sometimes sits to warm her hands by the outdoor heater. Her stomach rumbles, as if mocking her good fortune. What were the odds she'd find a wallet today, of all days, when she hadn't eaten since the night before? She hesitated, her fingers gripping the worn leather. Maybe it was empty. Maybe it was a sign. Opening it wouldn't hurt, right? But as she flipped it open, her conscience hit her like a freight train. The wallet was stuffed with crisp $100 bills and sleek black credit cards, each embossed with a name, Ethan Hayes. Her hands trembled as she stared at the money. It was more than enough to buy food, maybe even a cheap motel room for a few nights. But then her gaze landed on the photograph tucked inside. A man smiled back at her, his arm around an older woman who looked like his mother. The weight of her decision settled in her chest. Someone was missing this. Someone who clearly had a life, a family. Someone who probably worked hard for this money. With a sigh, Lily stuffed the wallet into her coat pocket. The least she could do was try to return it. Ethan Hayes sat at the head of a gleaming glass conference table, his sleeves rolled up and his expression sharp. He'd been in back-to-back meetings all day, yet his mind was elsewhere. Somewhere between leaving his penthouse that morning and arriving at the office, his wallet had vanished. It wasn't the money he cared about. He had more than enough of it. But the photograph inside, that picture of him with his late mother, was one of the few things he carried that held sentimental value. "Ethan, are you even listening?" His assistant, Marcus, frowned as he slid another folder across the table. "Wrap up the meeting," Ethan said, standing abruptly. "I have something more important to handle." Marcus raised a brow but didn't argue. Ethan wasn't just his boss. He was the Ethan Hayes, billionaire CEO of Hayes International. Even in his most distracted moments, the man commanded a room with ease. As Ethan stepped out of the conference room, his phone buzzed with a call from an unknown number. He considered ignoring it but swiped to answer on a whim. "Hello?" His voice was clipped, impatient. Hi. Is this Ethan Hayes?" A woman's voice, hesitant but clear. "Yes. Who's asking?" "This is going to sound strange, but I think I found your wallet." Lily waited nervously on the park bench, clutching the wallet in her hands. She had given Ethan her location, but now she was second-guessing everything. What if he thought she had stolen it? What if he didn't believe her? When a sleek black car pulled up to the curb, her heart stopped. A driver stepped out and opened the door, and out came a man who looked like he'd walked off the cover of a magazine. He was tall, impeccably dressed in a tailored suit, and carried himself with an air of authority that made Lily feel even smaller in her oversized coat and scuffed sneakers. "Are you Ethan?" she asked, her voice barely above a whisper. He nodded, his piercing blue eyes scanning her. "And you must be the woman who called me." She nodded quickly and held out the wallet. I found this on the street. I thought you'd want it back." Ethan's gaze flickered to the wallet, then back to her face. His expression was unreadable as he took it from her, opening it to check its contents. When he pulled out the photograph of his mother, his shoulders relaxed slightly. "You didn't take anything," he said, more as a statement than a question. Lily shook her head. "I wouldn't. I just thought it seemed important." Ethan studied her for a moment, his brows furrowing. She looked pale, underfed, and her coat barely seemed warm enough for the chilly autumn air. "What's your name?" "Lily," she said hesitantly. "Lily Carter." "Lily," he repeated, as if testing the name. "Do you need a ride somewhere?" She blinked, caught off guard. "No, I'm fine." He raised an eyebrow, unconvinced. "You don't look fine." Her cheeks flushed with embarrassment. "I'm okay, really. I just wanted to do the right thing." Ethan's lips pressed into a thin line. He wasn't used to people doing things without expecting something in return. In his world, favors came with strings attached. But there was something about Lily, her honesty, her vulnerability that struck a chord he didn't fully understand. "At least let me thank you properly," he said. "Dinner. My treat." Her eyes widened. "Dinner? Do you have somewhere else to be?" he asked, his tone light but firm. She hesitated, her pride warring with her empty stomach. Finally, she nodded. "Okay." The restaurant Ethan took her to was like nothing Lily had ever seen. Crystal chandeliers hung from the ceiling, and the tables were draped in white linen. She felt completely out of place in her worn clothes, but Ethan didn't seem to notice. Or if he did, he didn't care. As they sat across from each other, Lily couldn't help but fidget. "This is too much," she said, glancing around. "You didn't have to." "I wanted to," Ethan interrupted, his tone leaving no room for argument. "You did the right thing. That's rare these days." Lily looked down at the menu, her eyes widening at the prices. "I don't even know what half of this stuff is." "Then let me order for you," Ethan said with a small smile. For the first time that day, he felt his stress begin to fade. There was something oddly refreshing about Lily's honesty, her lack of pretense. As the evening went on, Lily found herself relaxing. Ethan was surprisingly easy to talk to, and she realized he wasn't as intimidating as she'd first thought. He asked about her life, how she'd ended up on the streets, what she dreamed of doing if she ever got back on her feet. She answered honestly, her walls slowly crumbling under his steady gaze. By the time dessert arrived, Lily was laughing at one of Ethan's rare jokes, and he found himself smiling in return. For the first time in years, he felt something unfamiliar tugging at his chest, a warmth he couldn't quite explain. When the evening came to an end, Ethan walked Lily to the car waiting outside. "Let me give you a ride," he said again. And this time, she didn't argue. As the car pulled away from the restaurant, Lily glanced at Ethan. "Thank you for everything." "No," he said, his voice soft. "Thank you." Neither of them realized it yet, but that night was just the beginning. Lily Carter woke up on the corner of the shelter floor, the hum of voices around her already loud. People were stirring, getting ready for another day of survival. She rubbed her eyes, her mind still lingering on the surreal dinner from the night before. Ethan's face, his calm confidence, and the way he'd actually listened to her, it all felt like a dream, a strange, fleeting moment of kindness she didn't quite know how to process. She reached into her pocket and pulled out the small card he'd handed her before she left the car. "In case you need anything," he had said. The simple embossed card bore his name and a number. Lily sighed, running her thumb over the glossy cardstock. What would she even say to someone like him? "Thank you again for the fancy dinner." She shook her head and stuffed the card back into her pocket. People like Ethan Hayes didn't think twice about people like her. He was probably just being polite. Still, as she stood in line for breakfast at the shelter, the thought of him stayed with her. The way he had looked at her, not with pity, but with genuine curiosity, had left an impression she couldn't shake. Meanwhile, across town, Ethan sat in his corner office, the skyline stretching endlessly beyond the floor-to-ceiling windows. He leaned back in his chair, staring at the photograph of his mother that now sat safely on his desk. For the first time in years, he couldn't focus. Meetings blurred together, emails went unanswered, and every time he tried to concentrate, his thoughts drifted back to Lily. There was something different about her. Ethan had met plenty of people who pretended to be kind, who wanted something from him because of his wealth. But Lily, she hadn't even known who he was when she returned the wallet. She had done it because it was the right thing to do, and there was no denying the way her honesty and resilience had struck him. "Everything okay, Ethan?" Marcus's voice broke through his thoughts as he entered the office, a tablet in hand. "Fine," Ethan replied quickly, though his tone lacked conviction. Marcus raised an eyebrow but didn't push. "Just a reminder, your schedule's packed this week. The charity gala is Friday night. Do you want me to confirm your attendance?" Ethan hesitated, an idea forming in the back of his mind. "Yes," he said slowly, "and make sure I have a +1. Marcus blinked, surprised. Ethan rarely brought anyone to events, let alone a date. "Of course. Should I?" "I'll handle it," Ethan cut in, already reaching for his phone. Lily was stuffing the few belongings she owned into her battered backpack when her phone rang, a cheap prepaid one she'd picked up months ago. She frowned at the unknown number but answered cautiously. "Hello? Lily, it's Ethan." Her grip on the phone tightened. Ethan? Yes. His voice was steady, his tone smooth. I hope I'm not interrupting. No, it's fine, she said, her heart racing. Is everything okay? Everything's fine, he assured her. I wanted to ask if you're free Friday evening. There's a charity gala I'm attending, and I was hoping you'd join me. Lily nearly dropped the phone. A gala? Me? Yes, you, Ethan said, his tone light but firm. It's nothing too formal, just an event to support local charities. I thought you might enjoy it. She hesitated, biting her lip. Ethan, I don't think I'm the right person to... You are, he interrupted, his voice softening. Please, Lily, say yes. The sincerity in his tone left her speechless. After a long pause, she finally whispered, Okay. Good, Ethan said, a smile evident in his voice. I'll send a car to pick you up. And don't worry about anything. I'll take care of it. When the call ended, Lily sank onto the edge of her cot, her head spinning. A gala? What was she even supposed to wear? 2 days later, Lily stood in front of a boutique she'd never dared to step into. The sleek mannequin in the window wore a dress that probably cost more than she had made in her entire life. She had almost turned around and left when a woman stepped outside, her smile warm and welcoming. Ms. Carter? The woman asked, holding a clipboard. Yes? Mr. Hayes arranged everything, the woman said, ushering her inside. Let's find you the perfect dress. Lily tried to protest, but it was no use. Within minutes, she was standing in front of a full-length mirror, staring at herself in a gown that didn't feel real. The rich emerald fabric hugged her frame perfectly, and the delicate beading shimmered in the light. She barely recognized herself. When Friday evening arrived, the car Ethan sent pulled up to the shelter, earning curious stares from everyone around. Lily climbed in nervously, clutching the small clutch purse that had come with the dress. The driver brought her to a grand hotel, its entrance lined with red carpet and photographers. Lily's heart pounded as she stepped out, barely having time to process her surroundings before Ethan appeared. His tuxedo was perfectly tailored, and his smile was reassuring. You look stunning, he said, offering his arm. Lily hesitated before taking it, her cheeks flushing. I feel like I don't belong here. You belong, Ethan said firmly, guiding her inside. The ballroom was dazzling. Crystal chandeliers, elegantly dressed guests, and waiters weaving through the crowd with trays of champagne. Lily clung to Ethan's arm, overwhelmed by the opulence around her. As the evening went on, Ethan introduced her to people, making sure to stay by her side. He watched as she charmed everyone with her genuine warmth, her laughter lighting up the room. At one point, as they stood by the balcony overlooking the city, Lily turned to him. Why did you bring me here, Ethan? He studied her for a moment, his expression unreadable. Because I wanted you to see what you're capable of. She frowned, confused. What do you mean? You're stronger than you realize, Lily, he said, his voice soft. You've been through so much, and yet you haven't let it break you. You have more potential than anyone in this room. Tears pricked her eyes at his words, but she quickly looked away, not wanting to cry in front of him. I don't know what to say. Then don't say anything, Ethan said, his gaze unwavering. For a moment, they stood there in silence, the city lights twinkling below them. And as Lily looked up at Ethan, she felt something shift. A spark, a connection she couldn't deny. Neither of them said it out loud, but they both knew this was the beginning of something neither of them had expected. Lily hesitated, glancing at the elegant crowd mingling inside the ballroom. Ethan's expression was unreadable, but there was a softness in his eyes that made her chest tighten. Ethan, I don't think I've never... Don't worry, he said, his lips curving into the faintest smile. I've got you. She stared at his outstretched hand, her heart racing. Against her better judgment, she placed her hand in his. His touch was warm, steady, and for a moment, all the noise around them seemed to fade away. Ethan pulled her closer, his other hand resting lightly on her waist. The music from inside drifted onto the balcony, soft and melodic as they began to sway. You're full of surprises, Lily said, her voice barely above a whisper. Ethan chuckled. So are you. They moved together slowly, as if the world had shrunk to just the two of them. Lily had never felt anything like it before, a strange mix of exhilaration and safety. She glanced up at Ethan, his face so close to hers that she could see the faint shadow of stubble on his jaw. "Why are you doing this?" she asked quietly, her voice trembling with curiosity and vulnerability. He met her gaze, his blue eyes piercing yet gentle. "Because I want to. Because I can." "That's not an answer," she said, though there was no real bite in her tone. Ethan sighed softly, his hand tightening ever so slightly around hers. "I don't know, Lily. Maybe it's because you remind me that there's still good in the world. Or maybe it's because you make me feel something I haven't felt in a long time." Her breath hitched at his words. She didn't know what to say, so she said nothing. Instead, she let herself get lost in the moment, in the warmth of his touch and the way his presence seemed to fill every corner of the space around her. When the song ended, Ethan didn't let go immediately. He held her there, his hand still resting on her waist, his eyes searching hers as if looking for something he couldn't quite name. "Ethan," she began, her voice trailing off. Before she could say anything else, a sharp voice interrupted them. "There you are, Ethan." They both turned to see a tall woman in a sleek black gown standing in the doorway. Her perfectly styled hair and sharp features screamed elegance, but the way her eyes flicked over Lily with thinly veiled disdain made Lily instinctively take a step back. "Victoria," Ethan said, his voice cooling. "What are you doing here?" "I could ask you the same thing," she said, her gaze darting pointedly to Lily. "But I suppose introductions are in order. I'm Victoria, Ethan's friend." Lily's stomach twisted at the hesitation in Victoria's voice, the way she lingered on the word friend, as if it carried more weight than it should. "I'm Lily," she said quickly, her voice steady despite the knot forming in her chest. Victoria's smile didn't reach her eyes. "Lily, how charming." Ethan stepped slightly in front of Lily, his stance protective. "Victoria, if you'll excuse us, we were in the middle of something." "Of course," Victoria said smoothly, though the sharpness in her tone suggested otherwise. "Don't let me interrupt." With that, she turned and disappeared back into the ballroom, leaving an uncomfortable silence in her wake. "I didn't know you had a friend like that," Lily said, trying to keep her voice neutral. Ethan sighed, running a hand through his hair. "She's not what you think. Victoria is complicated. She's part of my past, not my present." Lily nodded, though the uneasy feeling in her chest didn't entirely go away. "Come on," Ethan said, his voice softening. "Let's get out of here." "Out of here," she repeated, confused. "Trust me," he said, offering his hand again. Against her better judgment, she took it. A short while later, they were driving through the city in Ethan's car, the bright lights of the skyline reflecting off the windows. Lily stared out at the view, her thoughts swirling. "Where are we going?" she asked finally. "You'll see," Ethan said, his tone teasing. When the car pulled up to a private airfield, Lily's jaw dropped. A sleek white jet sat waiting, its engines humming softly. "Ethan, what?" "Come on," he said, stepping out of the car and opening her door. She followed him, her steps hesitant. "Are you serious? A jet?" "Have you ever been to Paris?" he asked, ignoring her question. Her eyes widened. "Paris? As in France?" He grinned. "Is there another Paris I should know about?" "Ethan, this is insane," she said, shaking her head. "We can't just go to Paris." "Why not?" he asked, his expression serious now. "You've spent too long saying no to things, Lily. Let me show you what it's like to say yes." She stared at him, torn between disbelief and the undeniable pull of his words. "Okay," she whispered finally. The grin that spread across Ethan's face was enough to make her heart skip a beat. Moments later, they were in the air, the city lights fading below them as they soared into the night. By the time they landed in Paris, the sun was just beginning to rise, casting a golden glow over the city. Lily stood by the window of the car as they drove through the quiet streets, her breath catching at the sight of the Eiffel Tower in the distance. "This doesn't feel real," she murmured. "Get used to it," Ethan said, his voice warm. He brought her to a small cafe near the Seine, where they sat outside, sipping coffee and watching the city come to life. Lily couldn't stop smiling, her earlier doubts fading away with each passing moment. "Thank you," she said suddenly, her voice soft. Ethan tilted his head, his eyes meeting hers. "For what?" "For all of this," she said, gesturing to the world around them, for making me feel like I matter. You do matter, Ethan said, his voice firm. More than you know. Lily looked at him, her heart swelling with emotions she wasn't sure how to name. And in that moment, sitting across from him in the heart of Paris, she realized something she hadn't let herself admit before. She was falling for him. And the way Ethan looked at her, his gaze filled with something deep and unspoken, made her think that maybe, just maybe, he was falling for her too. The distance between them closed as Ethan's gaze locked onto Lily's, unwavering. I don't care about fitting into a world that feels empty without you in it. Her breath caught in her throat. Ethan! I mean it, Lily, he said, his voice firm but filled with emotion. You showed me something I haven't felt in years. Something real. You reminded me that there's more to life than boardrooms and deals. And I don't care where you came from or what you think you don't deserve. You matter to me, more than you know. Lily's eyes glistened, but she quickly blinked back the tears threatening to fall. I don't know how to do this, she admitted, her voice barely above a whisper. I've spent so long trying to survive that I don't even know how to let someone care about me like this. Ethan reached out, gently brushing a strand of hair from her face. Then let me show you how. She stared at him, her heart pounding so loud she thought he might hear it. And before she could overthink it, before her fears could pull her away, she leaned in. Ethan met her halfway, his lips capturing hers in a kiss that was both tender and filled with a passion that left her breathless. His hand cupped her face, his thumb brushing against her cheek, while his other hand found its way to the small of her back, pulling her closer. When they finally pulled apart, Lily's cheeks were flushed, her eyes wide. Wow, she said softly. Ethan chuckled, his forehead resting against hers. Wow, indeed. They stood there for a moment, wrapped in the kind of silence that didn't need to be filled. And as the lights of Paris glittered around them, Lily felt something she hadn't felt in years. Hope. The next morning, Lily woke up to the sound of soft knocking on the door of the suite Ethan had insisted she stay in. She sat up, the plush bedding a stark contrast to the hard floors she was used to. Come in, she called, her voice still groggy. A hotel staff member entered, wheeling in a cart with a silver tray and a small vase holding a single red rose. Compliments of Mr. Hayes, the woman said with a polite smile before leaving. Lily stared at the cart for a moment, then lifted the lid to reveal a perfectly arranged breakfast. Fluffy croissants, fresh fruit, and a steaming cup of coffee. Beside the plate was a small note in Ethan's handwriting. Meet me downstairs. I have a surprise. She couldn't help but smile as she quickly got ready, opting for the dress Ethan had arranged to be delivered the previous evening. It was simple yet elegant, a soft blue fabric that flowed gracefully with every step. When she reached the lobby, Ethan was waiting for her, dressed casually in a crisp white shirt and dark jeans. His smile widened when he saw her. You look beautiful. You're going to spoil me, she said, though her cheeks flushed with warmth at the compliment. That's the plan, he said, offering his arm. Come on. He led her outside where a vintage car was waiting. The driver opened the door for them, and Lily slid in, marveling at the soft leather seats. Where are we going? She asked as the car pulled away. You'll see, Ethan replied, his tone teasing. The car wound its way through the streets of Paris before stopping at a small picturesque boutique near Montmartre. Lily looked at him, puzzled. A store? Not just any store, Ethan said, stepping out and holding the door open for her. Come on. The shop was filled with rows of dresses, shoes, and accessories that seemed to belong in a fairy tale. A woman with a warm smile approached them. Mr. Hayes, welcome back. Thank you, Simone, Ethan said. He turned to Lily. Anything you want, it's yours. Lily froze. Ethan, I can't. I mean, this is too much. Nothing is too much for you, he said simply. I want you to feel like the incredible woman you are. She hesitated, looking at the racks of luxurious clothing. I don't know where I'd even wear half of this. Then we'll find places, he said, his eyes twinkling. Or we'll make them. Lily couldn't help but laugh at his persistence. You're impossible. And you're worth it, he replied, his voice soft. By the time they left the boutique, Lily had a few carefully chosen items, though Ethan had tried to talk her into getting far more. As they walked hand in hand down the cobblestone streets, Lily felt a sense of lightness she hadn't felt in years. Later that evening, Ethan took her to a private dinner on a rooftop overlooking the Eiffel Tower. The table was set with candles and fine china, and a soft violin played in the background as the city lights sparkled below. "Do you do this for every woman you meet?" Lily teased as they sat down. "No," Ethan said, his tone serious. "Only you." She looked at him, her playful smile fading. "Ethan, I don't know how to thank you for all of this." "You don't have to thank me," he said, reaching across the table to take her hand. "Just let me show you what it's like to be loved." Her breath caught at his words. "Loved?" "Yes, Lily," he said, his eyes locking onto hers. "Because I love you. I think I've loved you since the moment you handed me that wallet and asked for nothing in return." Tears filled her eyes and she squeezed his hand. "I love you too, Ethan. I never thought I'd be able to say those words to anyone. But with you, it feels like I can finally breathe again." Ethan stood, pulling her gently to her feet. "Then let me make one thing clear," he said, his voice steady. "I don't care where you came from. I don't care about your past. What matters to me is that you're here now, and I want to spend the rest of my life making you as happy as you've made me." Before she could respond, he dropped to one knee, pulling a small velvet box from his pocket. Lily gasped as he opened it to reveal a stunning diamond ring. "Lily Carter," he said, his voice filled with emotion. "Will you marry me?" Tears streamed down her face as she nodded. "Yes," she whispered, 1,000 times yes. Ethan slid the ring onto her finger before standing and pulling her into his arms. As they kissed, the Eiffel Tower sparkled behind them, a perfect backdrop to the beginning of their forever. And for the first time in a long time, Lily knew she wasn't just surviving anymore. She was living, and she was loved. Lily and Ethan's story is more than just a romantic tale. It's a lesson about kindness, courage, and self-worth. In today's world, many of us feel judged based on our background, struggles, or past mistakes. But just like Lily, what truly matters is not where you come from, but how you embrace the future. One of the biggest takeaways from this story is to never underestimate the power of honesty and kindness. When Lily returned the wallet, she didn't expect anything in return, yet that simple act changed her life forever. In reality, sometimes a small act of goodness can lead to unexpected opportunities and help us connect with people who truly appreciate us. Here are some lessons we can apply in real life. Always be honest and sincere, as they are the foundation of meaningful relationships. Don't let circumstances define you. Dare to dream big and embrace new opportunities. Learn to love and value yourself because you deserve happiness and respect. If you love inspiring stories like this, subscribe to the channel today so you never miss another one.